Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to part 3 of Luther Never Too Much. Before we get into it, we're going to recap. So in the previous video, Luther's career had started to really take off. He had established himself as the one-take wonder. He was the go-to guy for background work and jingles. And he releases Never Too Much. Now, from the release of Never Too Much, his career explodes, right? All right, and that is where we'll start. After the release of Never Too Much, Luther's career exploded. He's doing interviews. He's on Johnny Carson. He's on Oprah. Luther describes it as the most exciting time in the world. He put his head, his heart, his mind, everything into the business. Now, subsequently to the release of Never Too Much, he released 4 additional albums after that, and they each went platinum. He says that his most thrilling part of his life and one of the greatest days of his life was meeting Aretha Franklin and Dionne Warwick. And as we know that he worked with them both. He actually helped Aretha Franklin gain her musical legs back on the chart with Jump to It. Remember that? Jump, jump, jump to it. Yes. And he also did a duet with Dionne Warwick. How Many Times Can We Say Goodbye? It was a beautiful song. So, Luther is experiencing all this greatness associated with his hard work. And of course, with every high, there's always a low, right? And that's no different for the man with the golden tones. In this instance, it was him dealing with his weight. And so what his background singer said in this documentary in regards to how Luther dealt with his weight was that he would use humor to kind of combat it. Robin was the young lady who was one of his friends, his childhood friends. She said that Luther had 2 extremes. He was either dieting or he was eating, one of the 2. And Luther says that he's an emotional eater. When he recorded the Stop to Love album, you know that song, I love you, stop, stop. He lost 120 pounds. He looked really good too on the album. Although at first, people were talking and being like, what's going on with Luther? Because everyone was used to seeing him very big. How we are, people start losing weight and then we want to think they sick and all of that type of stuff. So that's what he was experiencing when he first lost 120 pounds. But he did it. He said he enjoyed being slimmer. It didn't affect his voice at all. And as opposed to how he used to perform on stage, which would be in one place, singing a song, with all the weight gone, he would move around the stage now. So those were some of the things that he enjoyed about being slimmer. And of course, the outfits that he could wear. Now, he got his outfits custom anyway, but now he was getting into the high fashion designers like Gianni Versace, which was one of the designers that he missed. So weirdly at this point though, when they're talking about his weight and the fluctuation of it going up and down, to me in this documentary there was like a little disjointedness to it. Because from the mention of his coping with the weight issue, and they also mentioned that Eddie Murphy had made a joke about him being the heavy guy, but as soon as he does his little his riff that we talked about in the last video, that all the ladies went wild. So Luther, to combat that, like I said previously, coped with it with humor. And on one occasion when Eddie Murphy was at his show, he brings out this giant bucket with the branding of KFC on it, and he jokes that, hey, yeah, I listened to what you guys are saying. I know you guys have been talking about me, so, if we're going to have a party, we're going to have a party. And then he rolls out this big bucket of KFC. Of course, never showed him eating any chicken. It was huge, so I'm sure it was a prop. But from that weight issue, they jump into Luther being considered like the love doctor. And Jamie Foxx talks about how he used to, when the song came on the radio, any song of Luther, he would, call his girl up and, put the phone to the radio. And that was kind of like his way of speaking to his lady. And so they also mentioned that, by Luther being the love doctor, that, the type of songs that he sang and the passion and the intonations that he put into them sent people to the bedroom. I'm sure we've all heard, rumors of, that's a baby making song, that type of deal. And so Luther, I guess it was kind of flattering, but instead of being called like the love doctor, he preferred to be considered more a premier singer of that time than being a love doctor. That's what he wanted to be remembered as. 1986 comes and Luther is in a tragic accident. It's absolutely horrible. It hospitalized him. There were two other passengers in the car with them. There was a 15-year-old and a 27-year-old. The 15-year-old was injured pretty bad. However, the 27-year-old passed away, and his name was Lawrence Salvamini. So rest in peace to that young man. He was 27 years old, and the accident was so bad that, it took his life. Of course, Luther suffered greatly behind that. I mean, it's a big tragedy. He said this was a close friend, and as we could imagine, there's some real heavy grief associated with it. It affected him so much that he began to eat again, and he began to gain that weight back, and he was depressed, and he really needed the support of those people that he considered friends around him. And so Marcus Miller, which is one of his bassists, calls him and says, hey, are you doing okay? And he's like, no. And he was like, well, you want me to, do I need to come there? And he was like, yeah, that would be cool. And so he thought that was, that indicated to him that Luther was really down for him, to invite him and needed someone to be with him. Luther gets released from the hospital, but again, he's gained all this weight, and so much so that he's like, I don't think I want to tour. I think I'm going to cancel the tour. However, he thought better, and he actually did go out to tour, and it was a good thing that he did, because it helped him to kind of get his moods back to where they needed to be. So he had the people around him who loved him. He was back in his work, and he was doing the things that he loved. He was speaking to Oprah, and he stated this to her. He said, if you feel hurt or betrayed, whatever your coping mechanism is, whether you know it or not, you cope with something. You either go to church, you do drugs, you overeat, you do something to cope. And that was him explaining to the audience of what his coping mechanism was, and that it was food, and why, the weight was back on. Oprah had mentioned that she was walking down the street, and I don't believe this. I think she was quite honestly just saying this to be able to, broach the subject about weight gain. But she mentioned that she, because Oprah used to be big also, and then she lost a lot of weight. She said that she was walking down the street, and some lady said to her, you're just going to gain it back like Luther did. I'm like, first of all, that's a very rude thing to say to someone. I mean, the audacity to say that to someone. But it just sounded a little far-fetched for me for someone to just say that to someone, you know, and a celebrity at that. But anyway, that's what she says. And so that's when he, you know, explains, you know, his coping mechanism. That is something everyone copes somehow, and his somehow is the eating. So Luther's back on the road again, and at this point in the documentary, Ava Cherry, Lisa Fisher, and Kevin Owens, which are his background singers, they say that he was a taskmaster. They say that they rehearsed 6 days a week for 10 hours straight each day. But Luther had a requirement for perfection, and it showed in how he cast the voices for his songs. They said it was like, you know, a movie director casting actors to play certain parts. He would match the tonalities, the softness with all of the voices to create the sound that he wanted to produce and that he wanted to hear. Kevin Owens, the male background singer, stated that all of that rehearsing and that hard work made them so much better, you know. And as you can imagine, the more you do things, the more you get better with it. And particularly with bands, you know, the more, let's say, the original players stick together and rehearse and perform the songs, you know, over and over again, it generally and typically gets better and better the more you do it. And that's what they were experiencing. And they were literally, if you've ever seen a Luther Vandross show, were at the pinnacle of performance when they put on these elaborate productions. It was, like he says, Luther Vandross said, we don't play with y'all concert money, with your ticket money. And that's appreciated. I mean, consider how many concerts you've gone to, and it's like, really? For this? And considering how much concert tickets cost now, yes, we want a show. We want blood on the stage. We want it all. Give it to me. And so that's what Luther was doing. He didn't play about that. And they also speak of the costumes that they would wear. Those costumes were custom. They were hand-beaded gowns and custom designs, some of which even Luther Vandross himself designed. And they were great. They gave you elegance. They gave you class. And again, going back to, you know, the first part of the video that, you know, Luther talked about his influence with Motown. Remember, Motown was all about the class and, you know, the suits, the tux, and the gowns and that. And so that was definitely incorporated into his show and into his brand as an artist. So he has all this success. He's doing well. He's fought his way back from the darkness, from that, you know, horrible, tragic accident. And now he's battling as a black artist being pigeonholed. So many black artists are expected to stay in one lane. You can only do one thing. You stay here. If you sing R&B, you sing R&B. If you rap, you do you do rap. They want you to stay in your lane. Well, Luther didn't want that anymore. He wanted to cross over. And he felt this was most evident in how he was treated by the executives at the record labels. He would notice how other budgets of less melanated people was much larger than his. You know, they got more attention than he did. And so he fought with that. That was a constant fight for him to be treated fairly within the business. In fact, it was stated that pretty much that's all he wanted, was to be treated fairly. They also said that Luther Vandross was an astute businessman. He desired a #1 record. That's what he wanted. And often stated that he wanted a Grammy. And they said that, you know, around that time, nobody really said that, you know, that although they wanted it, no one really said, oh, I want a Grammy, you know. But Luther was very vocal about it. He, you know, he wanted to win a Grammy. And he had 9 nominations for Grammys. and lost out on each of those 9 nominations. But 10 was his lucky number, because on that 10th nomination, he actually won. And that was for Here and Now. Here and now, I promise to love faithfully. Remember that one? That's the go-to wedding song, you know. It's a very, very beautiful song. And so his background singers were stating that they teased him after he got the Grammy. The next day, I believe that they had rehearsal, and he told them, I want you all to now address me as Luther Grammy Award winning Vandross. And so, you know, they laughed at it. You know, he was joking, but Kevin Owens said, yeah, and he made us call him that all day that day. So we had to call him Luther Grammy Award winning Vandross for the entire day. That's funny. So, if you want to know the rest of the story, please stick around, hit that subscribe button. Please like as well, and hit the notification bell if there's one there. But I'd love to see you again. I'm going to share the final part of Luther Never Too Much very, very soon. I hope that you have a great day. I hope that you've enjoyed this little review. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.